All right, let's get right into it. We're going to talk about a huge, grand idea, a massive engineering project that was supposed to solve one of the world's biggest strategic headaches. But we're also going to talk about why it's a complete fantasy. Yep, a $100 billion lie. Everything, and I mean everything, starts with this one number, 20%. Just let that sink in. That's the share of the entire world's daily oil supply that flows through a single, tiny stretch of water. It's the kind of number that keeps governments and military strategists up at night. And that stretch of water is the textbook definition of this, a geopolitical choke point. You can just think of it like a bottleneck for the global economy. If that thing gets clogged, everybody, everywhere, feels the pain. And the most critical choke point on the planet? Well, that's the Strait of Hormuz. So that leads to a pretty logical question, right? If this one little passage is so vital and so vulnerable, why doesn't somebody just build a way around it? An alternate route, a bypass. On the surface, it sounds like a totally brilliant and obvious solution. Now, to really get why that bypass idea is so tempting, you have to appreciate just how critical this choke point really is. We're not just talking about a shipping lane here. This is, for all intents and purposes, a 21-mile-wide artery, and it's pumping the literal lifeblood of the global economy. Let's just run through the facts, because they're pretty staggering. It is the world's most important oil transit point, period. At its narrowest, it's only 21 miles wide. And get this, it's the only way for ships to get from the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. All that risk is concentrated in one tiny spot. Okay, so with the stakes being that high, you can see why that what if question started to get serious. It led to a truly radical, almost sci-fi proposal. The thinking was bold, you gotta give him that. If nature gave us a problem, well, then humanity would just engineer a solution. And that's where the Musandam Canal project comes in. The idea was to literally carve a brand new waterway right through this peninsula here in Oman. This would create a shortcut, a safe passage that completely bypasses the unpredictable Strait of Hormuz. I mean, on paper, it's a game-changing piece of strategic thinking. And look, when you break it down like this, it seems almost easy, doesn't it? Step 1, get the money. Step 2, dig the thing. Step 3, problem solved. Sure, $100 billion sounds like a lot of cash, but hey, to secure 20% of the world's oil supply, maybe that's a bargain. That's the seductive logic that got people excited. But, and this is a huge but, this is where that beautiful, simple logic slams headfirst into a wall. And I don't mean a metaphorical wall, I mean a literal geological wall made of solid rock. Yeah, the simple plan has a pretty massive problem. In this number right here, this number is the project's death sentence. 6,500 feet. That is how tall the mountains are that make up the Musandam Peninsula. We're not talking about digging through some hills or sand dunes. This is a legitimate mountain range. And this comparison just perfectly illustrates how insane the whole idea is. Look at this. The Panama Canal, one of the absolute greatest engineering achievements in all of human history, required digging through land that was 210 feet at its highest point. The Musandam Canal, well, that would mean blasting through more than 6,500 feet of rock. That is over 30 times higher. It's on a completely different planet of difficulty. So here's the bottom line. This isn't about digging a big ditch. This is about trying to carve a path through a solid mountain range. The whole proposal just fundamentally misunderstands what's actually there. It's treating a mountain like it's a minor inconvenience you can just bulldoze away. You can't. Now, if the giant mountain in the way wasn't enough to kill this idea, the money, or lack thereof, definitely is. Remember that nice round number we saw earlier? 100 billion? Yeah. Let's take a much closer look at that, because this is where the myth really becomes an outright lie. And hey, that's not just me saying it. The source material for this whole explainer calls it exactly that, the $100 billion lie. That's because it's not just a low estimate, it's a number so completely detached from reality, it can only be described as a work of fiction. This chart puts it all into perspective pretty clearly. The stated cost they floated was $100 billion, but any realistic analysis, when you factor in what it would actually take to blast through thousands of feet of solid rock, puts the real cost at over $500 billion. And honestly, that's probably being generous. So let's be crystal clear here. We're talking about a project that would cost so much, it would be one of the most expensive things humanity has ever even attempted to build. The financial case here is just as impossible as the engineering one. It's not happening. So where does all this leave us? Well, it brings us back to a really fundamental truth, one we sometimes forget in our high-tech world. And that is, sometimes you just can't engineer your way around the planet. Sometimes geography is destiny. So the unavoidable reality, the big takeaway here, is that the Musandam Canal is a myth. It's a geographical and financial fantasy. The reason the Strait of Hormuz is so important isn't because of a lack of imagination. It's because its role is protected by a 6,500-foot-high mountain range. And that, my friends, is a geographical fact that is, for all practical purposes, permanent. And that kind of leaves us with one final big question to think about. If you can't change the physical reality on the ground, if you can't just build a bypass around a fundamental problem like this, then what does have to change? Is it our politics, our energy policies, our technology? That's the real question, isn't it?